Welcome everybody. My name is Nasheen Arfani. I am the US representative for Wits University, and this is our Wits Fund Indaba, which we hold basically every quarter, so that we can hear from people who live here in the US and uh, hear about their stories and how did they get here and whatever they've been up to and so on. So it really is such a pleasure to welcome Balungile Belz. Um,
Mm.
I it's well, honestly, one of the best parts of my job is getting to meet new people. And I think about 3, 4 years ago, I
Yeah.
somehow phoned you. We somehow connected on LinkedIn. We had this conversation, we had this meeting, and I was just like, oh my gosh, we have to have her for the board. So so
Mhm.
we had a couple of conversations and I was able to, put your name forward to the name nominating committee. And it's just been such a pleasure to have you and your ideas and your forward thinking on the board. So I'm super delighted that you're speaking tonight and sharing with us how you've gotten from Joburg to Chicago
Mm.
and
Mm.
your non-linear leadership path. So I'm going to stop there so that you can have as much time and then we can have questions and answers later.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for the intro, Nish. I really appreciate it. And I think that phone call that we had, yeah, almost 4 years ago now was definitely one of the most amazing turning points in my life in a way where I could reconnect with Wits University, which is an institution that I care so deeply about. So thank you for all the work that you do. And I'm so grateful to the Wits US Fund Board as well. As Nushin mentioned, I'm Balungile, the most beautiful pronunciation of my name too. Thank you. Everyone calls me B though, and today I'm the CEO and co-founder of a really awesome pregnancy health and wellness company called Birth Order. So our mission is to increase support for pregnant women as they navigate the most transformational time of their lives. But it has been a non-linear path to get to this point, especially as a young CEO. And as I was kind of thinking and reflecting on my journey, I realized that there were so many balancing acts that I had to kind of take on. So it's been non-linear, but I will share my story in a linear fashion if that's okay. Because I think it just shows kind of the progress over the past almost 12 to going on maybe 12 to 15 years. So I grew up on a farm, for those of you who don't know, in Mpumalanga. Every Sunday, my father would drive me and my sister to school in town in the leafy suburbs. And then every Friday, my mother would come pick us up. So we were what you call boarders back in South Africa. And before the farm, we lived in a township and it was fine for the most part. Sometimes we experience water shedding during the day, and it always struck me that when I was at home, sometimes we'd have no water, but then at my private school, water would be freely flowing all day and night. And that's just a legacy of some of the tactics of apartheid that definitely I felt in my childhood growing up as well. In the township, we had community and family nearby, but on the farm, we had cows and goats and chickens, and would go to sleep with the smell of lavender in the summer breeze. So I loved it growing up. It was definitely very peaceful. But then I moved to Johannesburg, to the bustling city of Johannesburg, to attend Wits University. Um, and that's really where this journey began. Actually, the first time I visited Wits University, I was in grade 11 during an arts and culture trip to Johannesburg. So we did a few touristy things. We went to see the museums. We went to see the Lion King theater production, which was incredible. But out of a class of, I think, 60 something kids, I think only four of us went to Wits. And I realized years later that some of the learners from my grade, hadn't disregarded Wits, but actually they were just too scared to apply and they didn't think that they were good enough to get in. So that's always been very interesting for me because I kind of applied as I applied to many other institutions just because I could. I didn't even consider if I could have gotten in or not. So luckily I did, and we're here. Um, what else can I share? Yeah, I studied a Bachelor of Arts. My conviction was to change the world and work for the United Nations. So I studied international relations. I studied philosophy and psychology and sociology. So very deep in the social sciences. And I figured if I wanted to change the world, I had to understand how people think, how people act, and why they do the things they do, and why society is shaped the way it is. So um, I think my exposure to Wits was the first time that I was also exposed to students from just such different backgrounds than mine. I think throughout my schooling, I was very similar to the other kids in my class, and we kind of had similar things. We wore uniforms, so things felt similar and comfortable. But at Wits, it was the first time that, I saw with my own eyes students who would, sleep in the library because that was the only access they had to a computer or Wi-Fi. And many of these students were naturally gifted, but I really had to kind of step out of my bubble, and I realized that hard work was the equalizer, and everybody's performance was graded equally, and nobody brought more or less value. All we had was our brains and our hard work and our dedication. So that was really the first time that I really grappled, if I'm quite honest, with the real world and what it meant to operate in a competitive sense. Um, yeah, so I'm quite obsessed with optimization, and I spend a lot of time thinking about how people and organizations can do things differently, not just for the sake of it, but genuinely in ways that are more efficient and effective and will lead to a better experience for the customer. I do that in my work today, and I see that that's a thread throughout my career. Uh, when I was a student, I was also exposed to some incredible professors, in the international relations department. There were professors who were educated at Cambridge and Oxford and Stanford. So I kind of already had that global orientation. And I also participated in, I don't know if it still exists, but it was an incredible program called the International Human Rights Exchange Program, where US-based students from Bard and Emory and other esteemed US universities would spend a semester at Wits. And so, I made friends with these students, and they would all talk about their upcoming summer internship. So then I became obsessed with getting an internship as well, even though it wasn't common at all for BA students. Back then, even then, I kind of perceived that youth unemployment was a problem in South Africa. So I decided I want to make sure that by the time I graduate, I have some work experience. So wherever I interview, they have no excuse not to hire me. And I just wanted to be able to compete. So I think I've always really pushed myself, and I would lament this to my professors who were always confused, and they would try to tell me, Balungile, just focus on your studies. You'll be fine. You'll get a job. But I wore one professor down. His name was Professor Rod Allens, and he was exceedingly tough on every student, especially me. I would shake when I was receiving my grading assignments back from him, but he had a heart of gold, and he helped me create my own kind of internship. And I landed up working at the Hanns Seidel Stiftung, which was a German taxpayer-funded political education organization. So that was really my first major balancing act, because I was an honor student at Wits with all the responsibilities that we all know come with that, tutoring students, balancing classes. But I was also working part-time at the Stiftung, and one of my major projects was to launch the first, and I think it's still the only fully online civic education initiative gained geared towards the youth. And I've always been really interested in those kind of entrepreneurial efforts. I've always been the person who's kind of bringing up a new idea and trying something new. I think entrepreneurship is also the most challenging balancing act of all time. Uh, you know, during my honors year, like I mentioned, I was so stressed about being able to find work after university. And then a friend of mine gifted me a book called Choose Yourself by James Altucher. And that completely torpedoed any idea or sensibility of pursuing a traditional corporate career. Because I knew I was creative. I knew I liked trying different things. I knew I loved building relationships. I didn't ever want to feel stuck in like a career. The idea of a career trajectory just makes me very nervous. So I wanted to figure out how to cultivate those things that I enjoyed. I still had to work. And I also knew that I loved the kind of businesses that focus on customers. So providing a service or creating a product and actually connecting with customers, connecting with them on a human level. So that's when I actually developed my super secret plan, which I've been carrying out for over a decade now, where I will take on any job that comes my way as long as it's legal. As long as it pays so I can live decently. And as long as it feels like I'm learning something new about a new industry or a customer-focused business. So it turns out that the past, over a decade has been my version of a really long MBA, but without the debt. So during that internship, I told my boss at the Hanns Seidel Stiftung that I was interested in advertising. So he connected me with someone who worked at an agency that turned out to be a top 4 agency called FCB. Actually, this was back when it was still called Food Cone and Balding for any advertising veterans. And so that's where I worked on Toyota and Lexus, and I learned about launching websites and making multi-million rand television commercials and banner ads and retail activations. I learned about packaging and aftermarket sales on vehicles. It's all so boring, but it was great because I was learning about a completely different industry. And then after I had enough of that, I went back to Wits to get my master's degree, and have to share that I only could have done that because of the postgraduate merit award. And I really admire and value institutions like Wits and others who offer that kind of funding for postgraduate students to continue to pursue their studies. And so I had left advertising, was going to classes to get my master's, but still doing a balancing act because I couldn't stop. And I was freelancing as a producer at a tiny radio station. Some of you, it's actually not tiny, I'm being facetious. It's called Radio 702, or 702 by the time I got there. So I was curious about why this old medium was still so powerful, and I wanted to learn about how to create content that could inform people, but also entertain people. And I also loved, I got a lot of excitement from getting live feedback because listeners would tell us in our ears if they were unhappy about something. The presenters or the talent would tell us immediately before the show if they were unhappy with something. So it was an incredibly electrifying, but also very, like stimulating educational experience. So if you're curious about what my day looked like, managing the masters and this freelance producer gig, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd get to the station around 5:30, and then I would get the day's newspapers. I would photocopy them because John Robbie he wanted to read the news, but he didn't want the sound of the newspaper flipping on air. So I would spend 45 minutes every morning photocopying the newspaper. And then I talked to him a lot about business. And one day after a show, he said, "Follow me." And he let me sit in a corporate sales meeting. And he said to me, "You're doing fine with the producing, but we need more young people to understand the business." And so I was really like honored by that. And that was actually one of the best days of my life. And because that's when I really wise it up to the fact that you can always do more than the job that you have. There's always more to learn, always. And then on days that I didn't have class, I would produce like the afternoon show with Jenny Chris Williams, or then that became Sam Cowan. I'd do the evening show sometimes, and that's when the real characters would come out, like 9 p.m. to midnight. I'll never forget those callers. So
Mm.
yeah, I actually missed that job a lot. It was one of my favorite experiences just because of the things that I described. It was so challenging. It was, I mean, you were constantly had to balance so many different voices, so many different opinions and perspectives. But to this day, radio has been my favorite experience. But I had to leave because my classes eventually ended and I wanted to take the time to focus on my dissertation and submit that and graduate and move on. So yeah, I did a few things after that. I eventually moved to Chicago, which is why I'm here. When I sometimes jokingly say I followed a boy, but he was my husband who decided to pursue his MBA, the traditional MBA that put us in a lot of debt. I want to make that clear. Here in Chicago at Kellogg. And it was a great university that really tried to include spouses and partners. So I always recommend that program to any international folks who are looking for an MBA. It's really the most, it's an incredible school and so inclusive when it comes to partners and families. So I got a job as well working at a nonprofit. So that was kind of my exposure to the American college experience. Is kind of a social experience. So I was able to bring my passions in communication, but also gain more experience in the nonprofit context and fundraising specifically in the US, which is a completely different beast, of course. And it's still super helpful today. So yeah, I went back to advertising. I was going to share a little bit about transitioning from jobs, but I'll only share if a question comes up about it, because I'm sure anybody listening to this will say, it's either, wow, you've done so many things, or it's like, wow, you've done so many things. But like I mentioned in the beginning, that was always the plan for me. I mean, I very intentionally looked for opportunities where they arose and would pivot when I felt like I had learned enough or when I felt like I couldn't progress in what I was doing anymore. And, I think a lot of things change as well in corporate America or with companies. Um, I know everybody probably is aware or might not be aware that like there are layoffs happening right now. There's so many layoffs happening. Businesses are shutting down. And so one of the things that I had to kind of develop very quickly was assessing when my time was up with the company and then transitioning out in, a way that made sense for me and still keep a sense of control over my career instead of, feeling the weight of joblessness come down on me in an unsurprising way. So I try to mentor other people, like other young people around transitioning out of organizations or negotiating exit packages, because I think that's such an important thing and it happens so frequently and it's happening more and more frequently these days. So yeah, that's been my plan. I also kind of have dipped my toe in the venture capital space. After leaving advertising, I really wanted to focus on a mission-driven company that was a startup because I wanted exposure to the startup world. And so I found a company, well, they found me really. It was a company called Chief it had an amazing mission that focused on helping connect and support women executives. So it checked many boxes for me. And I was one of two employees who stood up the enterprise partnerships team at Chief. So this was a true sales role. I'd never done it before. I never imagined myself doing sales, but something just told me this is going to be your shot. And so I tried that And I'm happy that I tried it at that kind of company where I really connected with the mission. But I did leave Chief after 3 years to kind of take a self-imposed 3 to 6 month sabbatical just to figure out what I wanted to do next. And then as I was telling everyone goodbye and getting ready to go mail in my laptop, I had an accident and I fell down the stairs and broke my ankle in 2 places and tore 2 ligaments and had to have surgery. But it was okay because as I was saying goodbye to my last job, I was actually secretly planning to just take a month off because I could not rest. And then I was just planning to start applying for jobs. So it's either coincidence that told me just to take a beat or the universe that was just like, can you just hang on a minute, ma'am, and just rest? And I had to do it. I had to do it. And it was a really, really tough 3 months where I couldn't do much for myself. It turns out you need 2 legs. One, hopefully that's not injured. It makes it so much harder to do things when you're on an injured leg. And my husband was great and very supportive, but it was tough, especially with a toddler. But I had to sit and kind of really ruminate over this entire journey and everything else that I did that I haven't had time to share, and really figure out what meant the most to me. And that's really how I found my purpose. And I'm sure some of you, all of you have heard people say, do the thing that doesn't feel like work. Whenever I hear it, I would roll my eyes. Okay, I see some nodding, so that's good. Because I think the word work has such a terrible connotation. We all felt the heart palpitations over deadlines or the stress of not making enough money. Just the word itself can sometimes invoke a feeling or a sense of challenge or struggle. But for me, I really think it was when I found the intersection of my passion and my propensity, or I call it talent, and also a problem in the world, because I'm really passionate about companies that solve problems for customers, that I really found Birth Order. As a mom, I firsthand experienced the problem of the pregnancy experience and just the crisis of maternal health in America, coupled with my passion for connecting with customers and building incredible personalized experience, as well as just my talent for creative things and just the propensity to always push the envelope and try to always improve things in as little or as many ways as possible. So Birth Order has been really amazing. I have this inextinguishable passion for what we do, and I'm so excited to kind of finally bring in all the knowledge and the network that I've gained through my decades-long MBA. So yeah, it's kind of funny sharing this talk because Birth Order is still quite new. We're actually pre-launch and we're stepping into a really exciting phase where we're piloting new things that I think will really be disruptive in the maternal health and pregnancy wellness space. So I don't have much that I can share publicly about that now, but maybe I'll be back in 10 years or to share something more exciting there. But for now, I hope this has been illuminating in any way, shape, or form. It's been such a blessing, and I really appreciated the time to sit still and reflect on this. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for listening to my township to farm to city girls story. It's really been an honor.
Yeah, that's amazing, Balungile.
Yeah, I'm open to any questions too.
Balungile, some of the things that you shared hit so much at home with me. I have a daughter who finished Kellogg in 18 and was probably there around the time your husband was there. And
Yeah.
the other thing that hit me is that you're working in maternal and child health care. And I have another daughter who recently was married and was living in Texas. And I had feared until she recently moved to New York that I would have to go there and kill the governor if she got pregnant and there was a problem.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with your organization to deal with some of the issues related to maternal health? with what's happening in the country right now?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is that maternal health has really been neglected from a macro standpoint, and it's just been so devastating. But I think my passion comes from the fact that we're still dealing with individual human beings here who need support, and not all pregnancy experiences are the same. So what we do is we provide personalized coaching and, personalized support to individual customers to help them along in their pregnancy journey, whether they want to focus on overall health or just wellness related things as it pertains to nutrition or staying healthy or managing any like pregnancy conditions. We connect them with appropriate service providers where they live or virtually so that they can get that personalized one-to-one support. My pregnancy experience was not the same as any of my friends. And that's really and it really made me feel isolated and quirky in some ways. And that's what made me realize that kind of a one-size-fits-all approach is not enough anymore. I think we've also seen or heard the data around the Black maternal health crisis in America as well. And so I really, really believe in that personalized approach. It also respects, every single client's confidentiality. We abide by HIPAA rules as well, which we don't have to, but we do because we understand that that's so, so important. So it's still very early stages, but that's really the mission that we're focused on right now.
Thanks for really, that was a fantastic talk, and you could see I kind of loved the way you were pivoting and looking. For
Thank you.
something, my metric is like interesting. That's my favorite word. If it's interesting, then it can turn into useful and it can turn into profound. But, I always tell my students, start with the interesting. And that's a great sort of, for me, that's a great beginning. But I have a totally different question.
Oh.
As a woman in entrepreneurship, having felt the freedom, the confidence to move from position to position, do you think that you have felt more, less, the same pressure as if you were a man in your career? Have you ever given that any consideration?
That's a brilliant question. I will say that finally and officially pivoting into entrepreneurship in the context of now has been more freeing to me. And in my experiences working, the traditional corporate track, I have had experiences where I certainly felt less than or at a disadvantage of being a woman. So really one of the reasons I say that is, in about a week, I'm hosting a talk about the pregnancy penalty, which is a real thing, which is also something that I experienced working as a woman at a company with a really strong devotion and commitment to women. But there's so many ways that companies still don't quite get it right. Now, as an entrepreneur, I'm connecting with other female co-founders. I'm working directly with the customers to whom I feel a deep connection and passion about. And I can determine a lot of my priorities, and I determine a lot of the ways that I want to run this company. I'm very, very clear on the values as well. And I'm uncompromising in the experience that my customers and my employees will have when they come into contact with me. So it's tough to be an entrepreneur, but it gives me great satisfaction that I can do it the way that I'm doing it today.
That is a great answer. Thank you.
And a related question, Balungile. is you've worked like in South Africa, and then you've worked as a female executive and a person of color. What's the similarities or differences between the experience there? Because I know, we've got great women leadership in South Africa, lots of great female examples here in the US. Was it different? Do we have experience? Do women in South Africa experience different challenges to the women here?
Yeah, that's a good question too. All good questions. Okay, these are fantastic because you're really pushing me to think. So thank you for that gift. I would say one of the things that I experienced in South Africa was that I'm an ideas person, and like I said, I have that entrepreneurial spirit, and I just felt like things sometimes didn't move at the velocity that they needed to. Whereas here in the US, there's very much a culture of like, try something, ramp up support, test it in the market. If it fails, it fails. I think that's been my experience. And sometimes I think about whether I could run this kind of company in South Africa. And I think I could potentially, but there wouldn't be enough tests in the market among customers when I'm, thinking about pitching to investors. I really want the kind of business that is tested, like truly tested, so that it can earn its longevity in the world and in a business sense. I really believe that companies should deserve to survive, and that's the kind of company I build. And I think the US is just the kind of market that can really provide that kind of test and that kind of challenge for the business.
And
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was also,
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Are you finished? Because I have a
Yeah.
question.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
What do people, your customers, what do they want from you? What do they come to you expecting to receive in, what kinds of services do you offer? And
yeah, specifically, so specifically personalized support. So we look at, overall pregnancy health and wellness in terms of we use a really firm support framing. So that could be financial support, personal or community support, emotional support, mental health resources, etc. So our customers are the kind of customers who recognize that 5% of the pregnancy experience is spent in a doctor's office, but there's 95% of their lives and their health and wellness that they need support for, and they don't want to feel isolated, and they want to know that there's a dedicated place that they can turn to for resources or connections to non-medical, service providers in the pregnancy space, like doulas or midwives or acupuncturists or any of those other things that pertain to health and wellness that fall outside of the medical scope.
And one more question.
Yeah.
Coming from a physician, so forgive me for this question.
Yeah.
What kind of do you think about liability and
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wrong medically with their pregnancy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we don't see ourselves as an alternative to a medical team. We think of ourselves as kind of supplementing the work that a team is already doing. So we do, and I'm very diligent about encouraging our team and making sure that we're always communicating that customers should work, directly with their medical team, whether it's their OB-GYN or their family physician or their, whatever medical team. We put disclaimers on everything. We really want to make sure that these women are taking care of themselves, but also finding other ways to, supplement the medical advice that they're already receiving. And really, we're focusing on things that pertain to health. This is no like unconventional things. It's just about nutrition. and eating healthy and moving and, you know, incorporating gentle exercise in your life and mindfulness, reducing stress. You know, these are basic things that doctors tell us to do, but a lot of customers can't figure out how to incorporate that into their already busy lives.
How do you explain the rise of doulas? And could you tell people what they are? Because I mean, I'm hearing it all the time now, but I don't really know what they do.
Yeah, so doulas play, that's a great question. Doulas play a kind of educational role for many women who feel like they don't know what to expect or need some kind of insight or preparation as they head into the birthing experience. So doulas can work in hospital, they can work in birthing centers. I like to think of it as like somebody who has seen one or many births and can kind of give you a sense of what to expect, you know, experiencing your birthing journey. They also help, there are some doulas who also help in postpartum care as well, from anything from lactation consulting, if they're certified, to, you know, kind of giving advice on, you know, again, nutrition, taking rest, how to manage the healing process when it comes to postpartum recovery as well. I think the rise of doulas, it's really a personal choice. I think there definitely is, I definitely myself felt a lot of anxiety going into the birthing experience just because I didn't know what to expect. But I actually realized afterwards that I actually didn't need a doula. I think sometimes people think like they need a doula to cover their back in the birthing room or something, but that's not what we're looking for. I think we're just looking for more coaching and information and preparation about how to navigate the birthing experience. Hi, Hazel.
I have another question. You know, does your company provide really post-birth support? I think no, because one of the things, you know, I think that is most disturbing to me to see is how people can't cope afterwards. That you can be highly educated, you know, looks good, and you know, things happen after birth, and there's some terrible circumstances that we read. Obviously isolated situations, but I think, you know, the deeper question of not coping after childbirth, I think it seems to me in my own experience that is totally like ignored. You know, the whole birth and so on. I thought, okay, fine, you know, I'm a biologist, let the body do it. And that sort of more or less you know, it worked okay. But the afterwards, you know, how you feeling? Really, how you feeling? Really, how are things going? Like, really, how are things going? I think that just drops off totally. And medical care doesn't naturally provide it. It's up to the parent to seek help. And the parents who need it most may just not seek help. So I was wondering if, you know, a service that you might provide is like really, you know, following up for months afterwards. Maybe it would, you know, be actually somewhat lucrative, because honestly, I actually think it would sell that someone is caring about you. After I had children, I had for one of them, I had one home visit from a nurse, you know, and she said I was holding the baby wrong. And I thought, okay, fine. You know, that was it. And after that, nobody asked me how I was. And I had a like high-powered job and, you know, high-powered job. And so I'm just saying, actually, from the point of view, I don't know who your market is, but from the point of view of educated women who actually have the resources to pay for additional assistance with children, if you offered, I'm a year subscription, that there would be someone who checked in on you twice a week, probably need that 3 times a week even, and you paid for it. But actually, it might be a very popular, and I think it would be very helpful, because it can get desperate. And for women who are trying to go back to work with like almost no maternity leave, or they're stuck at home by themselves for the first time with, one or more child. It's a little desperate. And what do? You have to go seek your own help. You could actually, this just me thinking out loud, folks, but
I love it.
maybe you could offer a service where it would be this sort of 3 times a week check-in from someone caring, and they really would care and really ask, how are things going there? That's
Yeah.
my
No,
out loud.
you might be blowing the lid on all of our plans.
There you go. There you go. You can say an anonymous.
I love everything that you're saying, and I love all of the questions, because it's important to be so, for me personally, it's so important to be reflective in what we're doing and make sure this is like utility and meaning and will actually impact people's lives, but also that we're like, these are people's lives and deepest, aspirations. So I always try to be conscientious about what we're doing and how we're approaching this work. One of the things that we've realized is that a lot of women feel isolated and unsupported in the postpartum stage, but a lot of that preparation work can actually take place during pregnancy. A lot of the interventions in the maternal health space come at birth or come in the postpartum space, but kind of we're ignoring the entire pregnancy journey. And one of the things we've realized is, what about close support partners like co-parents or dads, spouses, the very people who live in the same house as you, but unfortunately, because of gender dynamics, women kind of take on the brunt and the load of managing the pregnancy and aren't getting.
Some men are involved.
Yes, for sure. For the most part, I hope I said that. For the most part. So for men who need, or who want to be more included in the pregnancy process, let's absolutely include them in our work, right? So when we're offering support services to pregnant women, we can also offer support services to their close support partners as well.
Some men are involved in the process and are involved in childcare. And one of the important companions to what Hazel was talking about, I know my wife has had a career, and we had 3 kids, and we had a live-in for probably about 14 years. And we could not, she was at General Electric and I was practicing law in New York. And until those kids were like 14, you can't make it and travel and move around. Coming in, at that period of time back in the 80s and 90s, I would sometimes come in at 1 a.m. by limo, and she might be traveling all over the country with GE. What people need is that type of service, and finding qualified people to take care of dual career families is a really big problem. And we were very fortunate that we had someone who stayed with us for most of those years, one person. But my point is, if someone could develop a business that provided quality people who, live in the home, travel with you, go on vacation, take care of your kids, know everything about them, that's a toughie. That's a toughie.
Yeah, I'd love to chat more about this. Just to kind of get more of your ideas and
but some of the men are involved every step of the way. Thank you very much.
For sure. I absolutely believe that. I have one of those too. But there's always more that we can do to support these kinds of families, and I completely agree. I think there's possibly some opportunity there.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I left a major firm and started my own is because it gave me the freedom. Like, Mr. Hubbard's not available, I'm at a soccer game. Mr. Hubbard's not available because he went to the play. Mr. Hubbard's not available because he went to the teachers' meeting. And having the ability to do that has added years to my life, and my children don't hate me.
That's a fantastic legacy. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but that's really our primary customer are working people who are just the time constraints and the pressure is just so much to handle by ourselves. And so, you know, how can we kind of help folks take the load off and make certain things easier so that, you know, the whole experience is easier to navigate.
Yeah.
And I speak, as I mentioned, I speak all the time with other amazing women co-founders who are running other companies as well outside of the pregnancy space. But what I'm so passionate about, and the way I answered the question you asked Hazel, I think it was Hazel, about whether I'd experienced any issues being a woman versus, you know, if I'd reflected on that. The conversation around families and supporting women and, you know, just finding a better way to do things is emerging, and it's so encouraging because I think there's just a lot of creativity and a lot of passion and compassion around the modern American family and what really holds families together and how we can build those families in a way that it's good for parents, but it's also good for kids in the long term. So I'm really inspired by all of the work that's happening right now, and all of us are kind of building and we're supporting each other. But I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see some incredible things coming out of a lot of these new types of businesses.
Well, like,
Go ahead, Adrian.
no, go ahead. I think somebody else had their hands up before me.
Yeah. Oh, hey, hi.
Yeah, I already spoke. I wanted to give others a chance, but Bruce, I didn't know all this about you. I always liked you, and I knew that we had a lot in common. It's really very hard to find a good childcare person, and we struggled initially in my family, 2 working parents, originally from South Africa with no family to support you. We finally got our person, and I'm now retired, and our person is still in our family. I mean, it's really a long journey. We finally got a good one when my children were maybe 5 and 7, and my 7-year-old said, "Mommy, this is the one I want. Please hire this one."
Oh.
And so she took care of the kids and the family. Then she took care of the dogs, and she took care of my in-laws who moved in. And then my in-laws passed away, and then we moved her and her husband to the city. She takes care of us, and she cooks for us, and she cooks for one of my kids. And it's like it's a lifelong
Relationship. Yep.
relationship, and it's really helps if you were dual career family. I don't know how you can do it otherwise. It's not possible.
It's not. It's really not. It feels so impossible. And it's partly why I had to also leave, you know, and kind of take the entrepreneurial part, because at least, I mean, it's challenging, but my husband and I couldn't have gone on the way that we did. It was just not tenable.
Yeah, but to have a good person is completely priceless, and it's very difficult to find.
I'd love to talk to you all more about this. Really, I would. I think we're onto something good.
No, it's an important business. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
Balungile,
good.
on a different thread, you know, just for people, like a lot of Wits is coming to the US and wanting to take the entrepreneurship path that you're taking. How would you say that your background, coming from South Africa, a graduate from South Africa, either helped or hurt you as you tried to raise funds for a new business and go down this entrepreneurial path? Like sometimes when you in South Africa, you have this huge network of people, you know, people you graduated with, they've started businesses, so you have a lot to draw on. Sometimes it's completely different when you start off in a new country. For other Butsies, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the typical but true answer is network, right? And I think that's probably why I've been kind of on this crazy mission of doing as many things as possible, but building a network that was as vast and as strong as possible, is because relationship building is so key. And I'm still doing it even today. Majority of my day is phone calls, phone calls, building relationships, having honest conversations, showing up at, the dinner, showing up at whatever it is, so people meet you and get to know you and see the passion that you have for what you're doing. And it's so tough, Indra. That's a brilliant question, because it almost feels like you're starting from nothing. But genuine relationship building, I think it's kind of, there's a snowball effect, because my network grew from the little nonprofit that I was in, and then kind of the network that my husband was in, and then the job, and then the startup, and then getting introduced to other startup founders, and then getting introduced to, the VC dudes, and then it just kind of grows from there. And it's also what you make it, so it's one of the few things that you have to get up and work at, but it's part of the journey. I think you have to genuinely love people and love building relationships to make it work.
Do you know Michelle Rogers at Kellogg?
I'm familiar with the name, but not
Okay.
personally.
Yeah, because I know that there's a program this week. My daughter's coming back to Kellogg,
Oh,
where they're
wow.
dealing with contemporary problems, and they're meeting at Kellogg. I think she'll be coming out later on this week. So I mean,
Yeah.
you should Google her and
Yeah.
get involved with her.
Yeah,
So
I'm writing this
she's
down.
she's a great resource at Kellogg.
Yeah. That's great. I'm writing that down. I do try to keep up with Kellogg, because they do some incredible things. And like I said, they're so supportive of spouses getting involved too. Even though my husband was getting the MBA, I would kind of poke my nose in and, like kind of insert myself in things. And I think that's also important. Like you have to insert yourself. You can't wait and ask to be invited. You have to show up and say, this is why I'm here. This is what I think I have to contribute. Can I play? And most of the time people say yes, because we all have something to contribute, right? One of the most inspiring things I heard when I was still a student at Wits was from Eusebius Mackay, who's now passed away, of course, but he, was talking about how as young people, we typically close the door on ourselves. We don't apply to the scholarship. We don't apply to the university like Oxford or whatever. We don't apply to the program. We don't apply to the job because we're so terrified to say no. But we have to give them the opportunity to say no to us. We can't tell ourselves no. And sometimes when you go for the thing, usually it's a yes. Sometimes it's a yes. So I learned back then, if I tell myself no, it's game over. If I stay at home, I don't send the email, I don't attend the event, I don't apply for the grant, it's an absolute no. But if I try and I show up and I shoot my shot, I might get a yes. So I wish I could tell more young people this because it really comes down to effort sometimes, and it's scary, but there's only one way, and it's to take a shot.
That experience that you're having coming from South Africa, we had 50 or 60 years ago with my generation here in the United States coming from the South. In 1965, when I graduated from high school going to college, the same type of hesitancy about taking opportunities existed, here in the United States. We're past that now.
You passed it, Bruce?
I say we are past that. People take chances now, and they're not afraid. When I went to Rutgers in '65, there were 15 Black students out of 1,500 in a class. There were no Hispanics, no women, no Asians, no Indians. The whole country has changed demographically since, and now you go to that school and all of those demographics are there. Totally different world.
It's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
How the world changes. So I didn't work at the UN. I didn't make it.
Not yet, maybe.
Not yet.
Not yet, yeah.
You still got another 60 years to go.
A dream deferred. I'm okay with it though. I've made my peace with it.
It's funny. It's funny.
That
I
was
do a lot of
amazing.
work with the UN.
Yeah. Some of I know two women from my class at Wits, my international relations class, who are at the UN right now. They're perfect for it though. I think that's also what's so beautiful is kind of we all land where we're meant to be in a way, or where it makes sense, I guess. So
There's a
much
serendipity that
be
will take
grateful
you where you
for.
belong.
Yeah, serendipity is one of my favorite things. Even I shared already about breaking my ankle and kind of being forced to stay still. And even then, so many things kind of popped up serendipitously. And I think that's also why I'm operating with more with a sense of more freedom now, because I'm connecting the dots where they make sense. I just follow what makes sense, and I try not to overthink and question too much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Balungile. I am going to say the official goodbye, if that's okay with Indran.
Yeah.
And thank everybody for being here. I'm going to just stop the recording and then we can carry on and chat some more, but
Yeah.
we can stick to the 1 hour deadline. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks,
And
everybody.
thank you so much.
Thank you,
Really.
Balungile.
No,
Thank you very much.
I can't even express my gratitude to you all. Really, this has been really such a wonderful experience. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Fantastic. It's an
Yeah,
honor.
it's awesome.
Really. Thank you.